Welcome to my channel, and today I want to share a story that will take you on a journey of courage, kindness, and unexpected twists. It's about a poor mechanic who found a girl on the roadside, and how one simple act of care changed not only her life, but the lives of many around them. From danger and secrets to love and redemption, this story shows how true kindness never goes unnoticed. So, let's start. The first thing Kofi noticed was the sound. It was not the familiar chaos of the roadside in Makola, not the angry horns of battered buses calling for passengers, not the coughing engines of old generators struggling to stay alive. This sound was different. It was smooth, deep, and powerful, like controlled thunder rolling across the road. It carried authority, weight, and money. Kofi froze with a spoon lifted halfway to Amara's mouth, his hand trembling in the air as if time itself had stopped. Amara sat weakly on an old wooden bench inside Kofi's roadside mechanic workshop, under a faded, dusty canopy that looked ready to tear apart any day the wind grew angry. Her thin back rested against a cracked wooden pillar, and her eyes were barely open. Her lips parted slightly, waiting for the next bite of food. The plate of rice shook in Kofi's hands as he leaned closer to her, his heart pounding harder than any engine he had ever repaired. He was not afraid of work. Kofi had fixed broken cars in heavy rain, under harsh sun, and even during sudden police raids that sent mechanics running. His hands shook now for a different reason. Amara looked like someone slipping away slowly, like a candle burning its last moments of light. Every breath she took felt borrowed, and Kofi felt like he was fighting something unseen, trying desperately to keep her tied to life. Small, he whispered gently, his voice soft and steady, the way an older brother would speak. Just this one for strength. Amara swallowed with effort. Her throat moved slowly, painfully, and her eyes fluttered weakly. They were dull with exhaustion, yet still alive. Kofi forced a smile, even though his chest felt heavy, tight with fear. That was when the convoy arrived. Black luxury cars rolled in from the road like a royal procession. Not one, not two, but many. Their bodies shining like polished mirrors under the sun. The workshop suddenly felt smaller, poorer, and exposed, like a hidden place that had been discovered. The vehicles parked close together, forming a wall of expensive metal that blocked the view of the road. Men stepped out first. Large men with hard faces, dressed in dark suits, wearing earpieces that whispered danger. They moved quickly, spreading out with purpose, scanning rooftops, corners, and shadows, as if expecting trouble to rise from Kofi's pile of worn tires. Their eyes missed nothing. Kofi's spoon stopped in the air again. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His mind searched desperately for one reason such people would come to a poor, roadside workshop. He had never seen anything like this in his life. One of the guards glanced at him with a look that made his stomach tighten, like Kofi himself was a problem that needed to be removed. Then the door of the front car opened slowly, heavy and deliberate, like the moment before thunder breaks. A polished black shoe touched the dusty ground, followed by another. A man stepped out. He was tall and broad, wearing an expensive navy suit over a clean white shirt. His grey beard was neatly trimmed, and his face looked like one people saw on television. Serious, controlled, powerful. Even without hearing his name, it was clear this man carried authority. Money followed him the way shadows followed the sun. The air changed instantly. The road seemed to hold its breath. A nearby street vendor stopped shouting. Even the wind felt quieter. The guards stood straighter. The man looked around once, calmly, then his eyes settled on Kofi's workshop. Without hurry, he began to walk toward it, step by step, as if the road belonged to him. Kofi's heart raced. His thoughts crashed into one another. Had he done something wrong? Was this about a customer's car? Was this the government? But the man did not look like the police. He looked like someone the police respected. Kofi stood up quickly, nearly dropping the plate of food. He wiped his oily hands on his stained mechanic overalls, though it made no difference. His fingers were still black with grease. As the man drew closer, Kofi noticed something unexpected. The man's face was tight with pain. Not anger. Pain, deep and restrained, like a father holding back tears. Behind Kofi, Amara shifted slightly. She was weak, but even she felt the weight of the moment. Her head lifted a little, her eyes struggling to focus. The man stepped into the workshop, dust clinging to the hem of his expensive trousers, but he did not care. He looked at Kofi briefly, then his eyes moved past him and locked onto Amara. His breath caught sharply. For a moment, he stood completely still. Then suddenly, he rushed forward, dropping all composure, all dignity, moving like a man chasing something he feared he had lost forever. Kofi stepped back in shock. "Sir!" he began. But the man did not answer. He fell to his knees on the dusty ground. His suit pressed into the dirt. His power meant nothing in that moment. Tears spilled freely from his eyes, darkening the dust beneath him. His lips trembled as his hands reached toward Amara, as if she might vanish if he blinked. "My daughter," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Amara." Kofi's world stopped. Amara's eyes widened faintly. She struggled to lift her hand. The man held her carefully, like fragile glass, then pulled her into his arms, hugging her with desperate gentleness. Amara rested her head against his chest, and even in her weakness, she hugged him back faintly, as if her body remembered him before her mind could fully catch up. Kofi stood frozen. His ears rang, his mouth went dry. The man looked up at him, tears still on his cheeks. "Thank you," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Thank you for saving my daughter." The plate in Kofi's hands almost slipped. His knees weakened as realization crashed into him. The girl he had rescued, fed, and watched over every day was not just a stranger. She was someone's child. Someone powerful. Someone wealthy enough to send a convoy of luxury cars to a forgotten roadside workshop. "I am Chief Adekunle Mensah," the man said quietly. "And Amara is my only child. She has been missing." Before Kofi could respond, Amara coughed violently. Her body jerked, her eyes rolled back, and her head fell limp against her father's arm. "Amara," Chief Mensah shouted. The guards moved instantly. Kofi dropped the plate, rice spilling across the dusty floor as panic surged through him. The girl he had fought so hard to keep alive was collapsing again, right in front of her father. And this time, Kofi was not sure she would wake up. Amara's body lay frighteningly still in Chief Adekunle Mensah's arms. Her breathing was shallow, almost invisible, and her lips had lost what little color they had gained over the past days. The dusty workshop that had once felt familiar to Kofi now felt like a place where life and death were arguing loudly, neither willing to step back. "Move! Give us space!" one of the guards shouted, his voice sharp with urgency. Kofi stumbled backward as the men rushed in. One guard gently but firmly guided him aside, while another opened a small medical kit pulled from the back of the luxury car. Chief Mensah held Amara tightly, his expensive suit now stained with dust and grains of rice, but he did not notice. His eyes were locked on her face, as if willing her to breathe through sheer force of love. "Amara, please," he whispered, his voice shaking badly. "Daddy is here! Open your eyes!" She did not respond. Kofi's legs felt weak. He had seen injuries before. Broken arms, crushed legs, bleeding heads dragged into his workshop because the hospital was too far or too expensive. But this was different. This girl had been slowly fading for days, and Kofi had fought death with nothing but patience, food, water, and care. Now death was pushing back hard. "Sir," a guard said quickly after checking Amara's pulse. "She is very weak. We must move now." Chief Mensah nodded immediately, his grief turning into sharp action. "Take her," he said. "Now!" The guards lifted Amara carefully and carried her toward the waiting car. Chief Mensah followed closely, never taking his eyes off her. Kofi stood frozen, his hands empty, his heart screaming to follow, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. He had fed her, spoken to her, watched over her night after night. Now she was being taken away, and he did not know if he would ever see her again. Suddenly, Chief Mensah stopped and turned. His sharp eyes found Kofi. "You!" he said firmly. Kofi flinched. "Come with us," Chief Mensah continued. "You know her condition better than anyone." Before Kofi could even think, a guard took his arm, not rough, but urgent, and guided him toward the car. Kofi glanced back at his workshop. The rusted tools, The broken engines, the wooden bench, everything he owned in the world. The door slammed shut, and the convoy sped away, leaving dust and silence behind. The clinic was private, quiet, and spotless. White walls, bright lights, and clean floors made Kofi feel small and out of place in his stained blue overalls. Doctors moved quickly, machines beeped steadily. Amara was taken into a room Kofi was not allowed to enter. Chief Mensah stood outside, pacing like a man trapped inside his own fear. He was no longer the powerful businessman from the roadside. He was just a father, rubbing his hands together, whispering prayers under his breath. Kofi sat on a metal chair nearby, his shoulders slumped, his head lowered. His mind replayed the night he had found Amara again and again. The rain had just stopped. He had been closing his workshop when he heard a weak sound behind the stacked tires. At first, he thought it was an animal. But something made him look again. That was when he saw her. Amara lay near the roadside, clothes torn, skin dirty, eyes barely open. She looked like someone who had walked too far with too much pain and finally collapsed. Kofi had hesitated, not because he lacked kindness, but because Makola was not gentle to those who helped strangers. Trouble followed kindness. Accusations, police, lies. But then she had whispered one word. Water. And Kofi knew he could not walk away. The clinic door opened suddenly. Kofi jumped to his feet. Chief Mensah stopped pacing as a doctor stepped out, removing his gloves. "How is she?" Chief Mensah asked quickly. The doctor sighed. "She is stable for now, very dehydrated, very weak. She has been without proper care for a long time, but she is strong." Chief Mensah closed his eyes. Tears slid down his cheeks. "Thank God," he whispered. Kofi felt his chest loosen slightly. "She will need rest," the doctor continued. "We will observe her for a few more hours, then she can go home." Chief Mensah nodded. "Whatever she needs." The doctor turned to Kofi. "You did well," he said calmly. "If she had stayed one more day without food and care, she might not have survived." Kofi swallowed hard. He did not know whether to feel proud or afraid. 3 hours later, Amara lay on a hospital bed, her face cleaner, her breathing steady. Chief Mensah sat beside her, holding her hand. Kofi stood near the door, unsure if he belonged there. Slowly, Amara's eyes opened. "Daddy," she whispered. "I am here," Chief Mensah said immediately. Her eyes shifted until they found Kofi. A weak smile touched her lips. "Thank you," she whispered. Kofi nodded, unable to speak. That night, Amara went home with her father. Kofi returned to his small room behind the workshop, lying awake on his thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. His mind would not rest. Convoys, clinics, billionaires, missing daughters. None of it felt real. The next morning, as Kofi worked under a car tightening a bolt, the sound returned. Smooth, heavy, powerful. The convoy had come back. Black luxury cars rolled into the same dusty space, drawing neighbors and hawkers who whispered and pointed. Kofi stood slowly, wiping his hands. Chief Mensah stepped out again, but this time Amara was with him. She walked carefully, her face still pale but alive. She moved straight toward Kofi and, before he could stop her, knelt on the dusty ground. "No, please," Kofi said quickly. "Stand up." She bowed her head. "You saved my life." People gasped. Chief Mensah raised his voice. "This man fed my daughter when she could not help herself. I promise you all, I will build the greatest mechanic workshop this city has ever seen for Kofi." The crowd erupted. But then Chief Mensah looked at Kofi seriously. "You must tell me everything that happened to my daughter." The workshop fell silent. Kofi knew the truth he was about to speak could change everything. The workshop became quiet in a way Kofi had never experienced before. The usual noise of engines, shouting drivers, and clanging tools disappeared, as if the road itself was listening. Neighbors who had rushed forward moments earlier slowly stepped back. Hawkers lowered their trays. Even the guards seemed to stand more carefully, forming a loose circle, not threatening, but alert. Chief Adekunle Mensah's eyes stayed fixed on Kofi. They were no longer filled with tears. They were calm, sharp, and serious, the eyes of a man used to truth, power, and consequences. "Speak," Chief Mensa said evenly. Take your time. Kofi swallowed hard. His throat felt dry and his palms were damp with sweat. He glanced once at Amara. She sat beside her father now on a chair a guard had brought, her hands folded neatly on her lap. Her eyes stayed on Kofi, gentle but steady, as if giving him silent courage. I found her at night, Kofi began slowly, near the roadside, behind those stacked tires. He pointed toward the back of the workshop. She was alone, he continued, very weak. She asked for water. I wanted to take her to a hospital, but she could not stand. I do not own a car, so I brought her inside. Chief Mensa nodded once. I fed her small portions, Kofi said. Rice, water, soup when I could afford it. Some days she could not eat at all. Some nights she cried in her sleep. Amara lowered her eyes. Her lips pressed together tightly. She kept apologizing, Kofi added, his voice breaking slightly. Like she was afraid of being a burden. Chief Mensa's jaw tightened. She told me she escaped, Kofi said. She said men held her. She said she did not know where she was anymore. At the word men, Chief Mensa stood up sharply. The guards stiffened instantly. Men? Chief Mensa asked, his voice suddenly cold. What men? Kofi hesitated. She did not tell me their names, sir. Only that they left her near the road when she became too weak. Chief Mensa closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something dark burned inside. He turned to his head of security and spoke quietly. We will talk later. Amara reached out and touched her father's arm. Daddy, please, she whispered. I am safe now. His expression softened immediately. 3 months later, the roadside workshop was gone. In its place stood something Makola had never seen before. A massive, modern mechanic complex rose where dust and broken engines once ruled. Bright lights illuminated clean floors. New machines filled wide bays. Glass offices reflected the sun. A signboard so large people stopped just to stare crowned the building. Kofi stood at the center of it all, wearing a clean blue overall, staring as if trapped inside a dream. Engineers moved calmly around him. Cars lined up from morning until night, luxury vehicles, company fleets, government cars. Everyone called him Master Kofi. Kofi had tried to refuse the gift, but Chief Mensa would not listen. This is not payment, he had said. This is justice. Within a year, Kofi's life changed faster than his mind could follow. He became respected, successful, and wealthy. He bought a home by the water, employed over 100 young engineers, and trained apprentices who once stood where he had stood, hungry and hopeful. Yet every time he saw Amara, something shifted inside him. She visited often at first, to say thank you. Later she stayed longer, asking about engines, about Kofi's childhood, about how he survived alone. Kofi tried to keep his distance. She was a powerful man's daughter. He was once a mechanic who survived on bread and tea. But life kept pulling them closer. His company maintained all of Chief Mensa's vehicles. Meetings became conversations. Conversations became laughter. Laughter turned into quiet moments that carried meaning neither of them spoke aloud. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the buildings, Amara stood beside Kofi watching the workers close for the day. You gave me a second life, she said softly. Before you fed me, I had given up. Kofi looked away. I only did what anyone should. She smiled sadly. Not everyone does. Their hands brushed. Neither moved away. Chief Mensa noticed everything. One night he called Kofi to his office. The room was large and quiet. Do you love my daughter? Chief Mensa asked without warning. Kofi's heart nearly stopped. I respect her, sir. That was not my question. Kofi took a deep breath. Yes, I do. Chief Mensa studied him for a long moment, then he nodded. If you hurt her, you will answer to me. I understand, Kofi said quietly. Months later, the city spoke of one wedding. The day Chief Mensa walked his daughter down the aisle, cameras flashed, whispers filled the hall. But just as the ceremony was about to begin, a man stepped forward shouting, This marriage should not happen. The hall erupted in chaos. The man raised a document. This paper will destroy everything you think you know about Kofi. Kofi froze. Amara turned to him in confusion. Chief Mensa stood still. My name is Bamidele, the man said loudly, and this man was once arrested. Gasps filled the room. Chief Mensa looked at Kofi. Is it true? Kofi's voice shook. Yes. The truth fell like thunder. I was arrested once, Kofi said, years ago, but I was innocent. The room exploded again. Kofi explained how robbers broke into a workshop where he slept, how he was blamed because he was poor, how he spent weeks locked away until the real criminals were caught. Chief Mensa read the document carefully. This shows an arrest, he said. It also shows a release. Bamidele's confidence faded. Before relief could settle, a woman stepped forward. I am Inspector Abeni, she said calmly. And there is one more thing you must know. She revealed the truth behind Amara's kidnapping, how the men panicked, how one argued to spare her life, how that man once stood against them years ago. That man was Kofi, Inspector Abeni said. The room broke into tears and prayers. Amara ran into Kofi's arms. I knew it, she cried. Chief Mensa stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. Forgive me, he said. You are not just marrying my daughter. You are joining my family. The wedding continued with deeper joy than before. The wedding resumed, but nothing about it felt ordinary anymore. The hall that had moments ago been filled with suspicion and fear now carried something deeper. Relief, gratitude, and quiet awe. When Amara and Kofi stood before each other again, their hands joined. It felt as though every struggle that had tried to pull them apart had instead welded them together. Chief Adekunle Mensah walked his daughter down the aisle with slow, steady steps. His shoulders were straight, his head held high, not with pride alone, but with trust. When he placed Amara's hand into Kofi's, he leaned closer and spoke softly. His voice meant only for him. You gave her food when she was dying, he said. Now give her a lifetime of love. Kofi nodded, his vision blurred by tears. I will, he promised. The vows were simple. Honest words, spoken without performance or pride. When they were pronounced husband and wife, the hall erupted. Cheers thundered louder than any music. Some people cried openly, others whispered prayers. Cameras flashed, but for Kofi and Amara, the world narrowed to the warmth of each other's hands, and the knowledge that truth had won. Life after the wedding did not slow down. It expanded. Kofi's mechanic complex grew into a landmark. Young men and women arrived from different regions, hoping to learn from the man whose kindness had become legend. Yet Kofi never changed. He still arrived early each morning. He still wore his overalls. He still spoke gently, even when correcting mistakes. Those who worked under him noticed that success had not hardened him, it had softened him. Amara joined him often, not as the daughter of a powerful man, not as a symbol of wealth, but as his partner. One afternoon, while walking through a storage area behind the workshop, she stopped suddenly. An old wooden bench sat there, pushed aside, dusty but intact. This is where I sat, she said quietly. Kofi nodded. And this is where I learned who I really was. Together, they began something new. Every Friday, food was prepared and distributed to roadside workers, struggling families, clinics, and shelters. Amara insisted on going herself. She served meals with her own hands, smiling gently when people thanked her. When they asked why she did it, she always said the same thing. Someone once fed me when I could not stand. Chief Mensa watched all of this from a distance. He did not interfere. He did not control. He simply observed, knowing that the man his daughter married was strong in the only way that truly mattered. But life, even when healed, still tests. One evening, Inspector Abeni arrived quietly at the workshop. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried weight. She requested to speak with Kofi and Chief Mensa privately. Inside the glass office, she explained that the men responsible for Amara's kidnapping had not all been captured. One remained hidden, protected by silence and fear. They will not stop, she said. Not because of Amara, but because truth exposed them. Kofi listened without fear. Then we stand, he said simply. Weeks later, the final suspect was arrested. Evidence surfaced. Confessions followed. The case that once threatened to destroy everything instead became a story of justice completed. When the news spread, people spoke not just of a rescued daughter or a powerful father, but of a mechanic whose quiet courage changed many lives. One evening, as the sun set over the glowing workshop, Amara leaned against Kofi's shoulder. "Do you know what truly saved me?" she asked softly. Kofi thought for a moment. "Food," he said. She smiled and shook her head. "Not just food. Kindness that refused to stop." Kofi looked around, the workers, the lights, the movement, the life that had grown from one simple decision. He remembered the weak girl behind the tires, the trembling spoon in his hand, the fear that kindness might cost him everything. Sometimes the world is not changed by power or wealth. Sometimes it is changed by a man who keeps feeding even when no one is watching. Even as peace settled into Kofi and Amara's life, Makola remained a place where silence often hid danger. The mechanic complex thrived, but with growth came attention. Some admired Kofi, others watched with envy, and a few remembered the past, not with forgiveness, but with bitterness. One late evening, long after the workers had gone home, Kofi stayed behind checking accounts. The lights inside the glass office glowed softly when he noticed movement outside the gate. A man stood there, half hidden in shadow, watching the building as if measuring it. Kofi stepped outside calmly. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man did not answer immediately. When he finally stepped forward, Kofi recognized him, not by name, but by memory. One of the men who once worked in the old mechanic yard years ago. One of the men who chose shortcuts over honesty. "You rose too fast," the man said quietly. "Some people don't forget where you came from." Kofi met his eyes without fear. "I didn't rise alone," he replied. "I rose because someone once fed me trust." The man scoffed and walked away, but his words stayed with Kofi like dust on skin. That night, Kofi told Amara everything. She listened silently, then took his hands. "We don't hide," she said firmly. "We stand in the open." Amara decided her survival would not remain only a private miracle. She began speaking quietly at first, visiting clinics, shelters, and youth centers. She spoke not as a wealthy woman, but as someone who had been broken and lifted by kindness. "I survived because one man refused to walk away," she told them. "Not because he was powerful, but because he was present." Her story spread. Young people listened. Parents listened. Even those hardened by life paused. Inspector Abeni later told Chief Mensah, "Your daughter is doing more than we expected. She's changing minds." Chief Mensah nodded. She learned from the right man. But the more visible Amara became, the more uncomfortable it made those who preferred silence. Truth had a way of disturbing hidden places. Trouble returned quietly, not with shouting or accusations, but with papers. An anonymous petition questioned Kofi's past again, demanding investigations, audits, and suspensions. Rumors tried to crawl back into public space. This time, Kofi did not panic. He stood before his workers and spoke plainly. "My past is not clean of pain," he said, "but it is clean of lies. Anyone who wants the truth may look directly at it." Chief Mensah stood beside him publicly. Inspector Abeni released full records. Witnesses spoke, evidence was laid bare, the noise faded. What remained was something stronger than reputation, trust earned repeatedly. The same people who once doubted now defended Kofi openly. The attempt to drag him down collapsed under its own weight. Years passed. The mechanic complex expanded into a training institute. Young people graduated with skills, dignity, and purpose. Many said the same thing. "We came because of the story. We stayed because of the man." Amara and Kofi had children who ran through the workshop, laughing, climbing onto old tires, just as she once leaned against them in weakness. The old wooden bench was preserved inside a small office, not as decoration, but as memory. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Amara stood beside Kofi watching the workers close for the day. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked softly. "Every day," Kofi replied. "And would you do it again?" she asked. He smiled gently, without hesitation. Amara leaned against him. "Then promise me something." "What?" he asked. "Never let success make us forget hunger," she said. Kofi nodded. "Never." And so the man who once owned nothing but kindness passed it forward again and again, proving that sometimes the greatest legacy is not what you build with money, but what you protect with compassion. Because the world is not always saved by power. Sometimes it is saved by someone who keeps feeding, even when no one is watching. Thank you for reading this story with me. It reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can change lives, and that courage and compassion can overcome fear, darkness, and uncertainty. Life may test us in unexpected ways, but choosing to help, to care, and to stand for what is right can create ripples that touch more hearts than we can imagine. Remember, every act of love matters, and sometimes the world is saved by those who quietly refuse to turn away. If this story inspired you, share it, spread kindness, and never underestimate the power of one good deed. If you like this story, make sure you subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share with your friends and family so you don't miss the next powerful story coming your way. Drop a heart in comment, like and subscribe my channel, and visit my channel for more interesting story videos.